The conference room went silent the moment the old man in the faded work jacket set a laminated contractor badge on the polished table. The executives had spent the last 10 minutes laughing about him in the hallway. Security had already been called. The CEO had personally ordered him removed for wandering into the wrong floor without an appointment. Nobody recognized the calloused hands. Nobody looked past the coffee stain on his collar. They didn't know they were staring at the man who had poured the foundation of this building with his own money 31 years ago. The founder who had quietly disappeared 4 years back, right after his wife stopped recognizing his face. If you want to know how a grandfather in steel-toed boots walked into a glass tower and brought down the people stealing it from the inside, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I know how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. Kathleen Marsh noticed the man from the elevator bank. She was running 4 minutes late to the quarterly review, carrying 2 folders and a cold coffee, when she spotted him through the lobby glass, standing near the reception desk with the particular stillness of someone who had learned not to take up too much space. He wore a canvas work jacket the color of dried mud, sleeves fraying at the cuffs. His boots were old but clean. Beside him, a girl of about 7 sat on the waiting bench with a backpack shaped like a strawberry, swinging her legs and humming to herself. Kathleen paused. The receptionist, a young man named Preston, was speaking to the old man in the careful, louder-than-necessary voice people use when they've already decided someone doesn't belong. Kathleen couldn't hear the words through the glass, but she could read the posture. The old man's jaw was set. The girl had stopped humming. Should we call security up? Her assistant, Darren, appeared at her elbow with a tablet and a look of mild alarm. He's been down there for almost 25 minutes. No appointment in the system. Won't give his name. Kathleen looked again. The old man had crouched down to say something to the girl. The girl nodded seriously and pulled her backpack straps tighter, like she was bracing for something. Yes, Kathleen said. Politely, tell them to ask him to leave. She turned away toward the boardroom. She didn't see the way the old man straightened when security approached. Didn't hear the girl ask quietly, Grandpa, are those men going to make us go? The quarterly review was already starting when Kathleen arrived. Gordon Fife sat at the head of the table, VP of Operations, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the easy authority of someone who had never once doubted his own judgment. He had been with Hartwell Timber and Land for 19 years. He had been waiting for the CEO chair for most of them. Kathleen, he said warmly, we were just getting started. She set her folders down. What are we looking at for the Northern portfolio? Strong, said Fiona Lamb, the CFO. Acquisitions in the Caribou are ahead of schedule. If we move on the Clearwater Valley deal by end of month, we're projecting an 18% margin increase by Q3. Kathleen opened her binder to the environmental review section. The Clearwater Valley parcel is under a stewardship covenant. Indigenous land use agreements from 2009 need to be renegotiated, not overridden. Gordon's smile didn't shift. We've had legal look at it. The covenant has an ambiguity clause. Ambiguity isn't the same as permission. The market doesn't wait for perfect paperwork. Gordon leaned forward in that way he had, patient and paternal, like he was explaining something to a person who meant well but didn't quite understand how the world worked. Kathleen, we have a window. 6 weeks, maybe 8. If Meridian Capital closes on that land first, we lose the decade's best acquisition. Then we lose it cleanly. Kathleen closed the binder. I'm not signing off on any deal that bypasses the stewardship terms. Schedule a proper consultation with the nations involved. Gordon and Fiona exchanged the kind of look that was gone in under a second, the kind Kathleen had been noticing for 7 months. Her phone buzzed. Darren. Situation escalating in the lobby. Security involved. Thought you should know. She excused herself. She took the stairs down, expecting a process server or a disgruntled former contractor. What she found was something that made her stop on the 3rd step from the bottom. The old man was still there. 2 security guards flanked him now, and a small crowd of employees had gathered near the coffee station, pretending not to watch. The girl, his granddaughter, Kathleen guessed, was pressed against his side, face turned into his jacket. Preston was on the phone behind the desk, speaking quietly and urgently, but what stopped Kathleen was the receptionist, a woman named Bev Kowalski, who had worked the front desk at Hartwell for 22 years. Bev was standing between the security guards and the old man, with her arms slightly out, not dramatically, just enough, a small, stubborn human barrier. This gentleman has not caused any disturbance, Bev was saying, in a voice Kathleen had never heard her use before. He's asked to speak with someone. That's all. He doesn't have clearance, the guard said. He doesn't need clearance to stand in a lobby. Ma'am, if he won't leave voluntarily, he's not going to leave voluntarily. Bev's chin lifted, because he has every right to be here. Kathleen descended the last 3 steps. The crowd shifted. The guard straightened. "What's the problem?" she asked. The head of security, a man named Carver, turned to her. "Unauthorized individual, ma'am, refusing to vacate. We've asked 3 times." Kathleen looked at the old man. Up close, he was older than she'd thought from the elevator, mid-70s maybe, with the deep lines of someone who had spent decades outdoors. His hands were enormous, knuckle-heavy. His eyes were gray and absolutely steady. "I'm Kathleen Marsh," she said, CEO. The man's voice was quiet and unhurried. "Yes, we had to talk about what's happening to this company. There are financial irregularities. Significant ones. That's a serious claim. I know it is. Then make an appointment through proper channels. I tried that, twice. His eyes didn't leave hers. The first time I was told the executive team doesn't take unsolicited meetings. The second time the call was disconnected. Before Kathleen could respond, the elevator opened behind her. Gordon stepped out, Fiona half a step behind him. Seriously? Gordon's voice had that flat amusement it got when he found something beneath him. "We interrupted a board review for this?" Kathleen said. "I'm handling it. You're handling it by standing in the lobby talking to." Gordon looked the old man up and down. "What is this, a heritage moment? Bring back a retired janitor." The girl made a small sound and pressed harder into the old man's side. Kathleen said, "Gordon, I'm just asking the obvious question." Gordon spread his hands. "Sir, whatever you think is happening here, this is a private company. You don't have an appointment. You don't have ID on file. You need to leave." The old man looked at Gordon for a long moment. His expression didn't change. "His name is Rosie," he said quietly. "What?" "My granddaughter. Her name is Rosie, and you don't get to talk around her like she's furniture." Gordon blinked. Then he laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Kathleen, I'll leave you to this." He turned back toward the elevator. "Everyone wait." Kathleen's voice came out sharper than she intended. She looked at the guards. "Carver, stand down. This man hasn't threatened anyone. He's asked for a conversation." She turned to the old man. "Conference room on the 2nd floor. You have 10 minutes." He nodded once. "Thank you." He picked up a battered canvas bag from beside the bench and offered his hand to Rosie, who took it without hesitation, her backpack bouncing as she fell into step beside him. The conference room was small and utilitarian. Kathleen sat across from the old man and his granddaughter, who had produced a coloring book from her strawberry backpack and was already working industriously on a picture of what appeared to be a moose. "Talk," Kathleen said. The old man set the canvas bag on the table. "Your VP of Operations is running a parallel land acquisition scheme through a numbered company registered in Alberta. He's been identifying Hartwell parcels he can undervalue on internal reports, flagging them for divestment, and purchasing them through a shell entity at a discount, then flipping them to Meridian Capital within 18 months for 2 to 5 times the price." He slid a manila envelope across the table. "It's been going on for 3 years. 21 transactions. Total value extracted from this company, approximately $38 million. Kathleen's throat tightened. "That's an extraordinary accusation. It's a documented one. Where did you get this?" The old man was quiet for a moment. "Let's say I've been watching for a while. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now." His eyes were patient. "Look at what I've given you. Verify it. Then we can talk about where it came from. And if it's fabricated, it isn't. But if you think it is, an audit will tell you that quickly." Kathleen picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "Why come to me? Why not go directly to the RCMP? Because you haven't been part of it." He said it simply, without flattery. "I wanted to give you a chance to handle this before it becomes a criminal matter. How do you know I haven't been part of it?" Something in his expression shifted, not quite a smile. "Because Gordon wouldn't have let you get close enough to be useful to him." Rosie looked up. "Grandpa, I finished the moose." He leaned over to look. "Oh, bug. What color is he?" "Purple. Perfect color for a moose." "I know." She went back to coloring. Kathleen watched them. "You still haven't told me who you are." The old man looked at her steadily. "Does it matter yet?" "Yes, because I need to know whether to trust you." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "This company was founded in 1993 by 2 people who believed that resource development and land stewardship didn't have to be enemies, that you could build a profitable timber business that still left the land better than you found it. That was the whole point. It still should be." Kathleen's chest went still. "I know the founding history. Do you believe it?" She didn't answer immediately. "I believe sustainable business is possible. I believe it's harder than people claim. I believe the market punishes companies that move slowly on acquisition windows. That's what Gordon tells you. Gordon knows the industry. Gordon knows how to extract value." The old man's voice was level. "That's different. The man who built this company knew how to create it." Kathleen looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "What's your name?" He glanced at Rosie, who was now very focused on coloring what appeared to be a purple river beside the purple moose. "Not yet," he said. "Look at what's in that envelope first. Tonight." Don't tell Gordon. Don't tell Fiona. Verify the documents on your own before you say a word to anyone on the executive floor. And if I decide not to, then you'll have made your choice." He stood and helped Rosie pack her coloring book away. "But I don't think that's who you are." He picked up Rosie's hand and they walked out. Kathleen sat alone with the envelope on the table in front of her and the particular silence of a room where something had just changed. She went back to her office, locked the door, opened the envelope at her desk. She read for 2 hours. At hour 3, she called Darren and told him to cancel everything the next morning. At hour 4, she understood why. Gordon Fife had built something elegant and patient and almost invisible. The numbered company, 2847391 Alberta Limited, had been incorporated 4 years ago under a name that appeared nowhere in Hartwell's vendor records because it wasn't a vendor. It was a buyer. It purchased land through a different intermediary each time, always within 6 months of Hartwell's internal divestment recommendation, always at the assessed value Fiona's team had approved. The land assessments themselves were the mechanism. Gordon would flag a parcel as underperforming, logging yields below target, remediation costs projected too high, access road maintenance burden too great. The board would vote to divest. The sale would close, and 18 months later, the same parcel would appear in a Meridian Capital portfolio at a value that bore no relationship to what Hartwell had received. Fiona's role was cleaner and therefore harder to prove. She had signed off on the assessments. That was all, technically. But the assessments had been prepared by a contractor whose invoices ran through a company that shared a registered address with Gordon's sister in Red Deer. At midnight, Kathleen called the one board member she trusted without reservation, Harold Stenwick, 74 years old, semi-retired, founding board chair. "Harold," she said when he answered, "I need to talk to you about Gordon Fife." There was a silence on the line that told her Harold had been expecting this call for longer than she had. "How bad?" he said. $38 million and counting. Another silence. Then, "Describe the man who gave you this information." She did. The work jacket, the steady gray eyes, the granddaughter with the strawberry backpack. Harold exhaled slowly. "Oh, Lord. Harold, I'm getting in the car. Don't confront Gordon. Don't speak to Fiona. Don't move on any of this until I'm there. Why? We have documentation. We should. Because you don't understand the full picture yet." He paused. "Kathleen, that man, did he have big hands? Scar on his left chin just below the jaw?" Yes, Harold made it a sound she couldn't classify. "That's Walter Hartwell." The name hit her like a step missed in the dark. Walter Hartwell, the founder. The man who had built this company from a single lease on Crown land north of Kamloops, who had partnered with local nations on 3 stewardship agreements that had become legal templates across BC, who had stepped back from the board 4 years ago when his wife was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's and had never come back. "That's impossible," Kathleen said. "Walter Hartwell's is what?" Harold's voice was dry. "Dead? Retired? Too grief-stricken to care anymore? I've been CEO for 3 years. I've never met him. He's never once reached out. He reached out to me 6 months ago. Said someone inside the company had contacted him, told him what Gordon was doing. He asked me to stay quiet while he gathered evidence. He didn't want to come back through official channels until he had something airtight. Why not just call the RCMP directly? Because he wanted to give the company a chance to fix this internally first." Harold's voice was quieter now, and because he wanted to see what kind of people were running it before he decided whether it was worth saving. Kathleen thought about the lobby, about Gordon's dismissal, about Bev Kowalski standing between the security guards and an old man with her arms out. "We failed him," she said. "You stopped it when it mattered." Harold paused. "I'm leaving now. Don't do anything until I arrive." She sat in her office for a long time after the call ended, the manila envelope spread across 3 monitors, the city dark and quiet beyond the glass. Somewhere across town, a grandfather was putting a 7-year-old to bed and reading her a story and telling her that today had been hard, but tomorrow would be different. She opened her laptop and began drafting an email to the full board. Not the version Gordon would have expected, the real one, the one that began, "I am writing to inform you of credible evidence of sustained financial misconduct at the executive level, requiring immediate independent investigation." She sent it at... Her phone began ringing at 4:15. The first call was from board member Sandra Shung, who demanded to know if Kathleen understood the liability implications of what she had just sent. The second was from a board member named Franklin, who said 3 words, "Who told you?" and then hung up when Kathleen said Walter Hartwell. By 6:30, Hartwell's employee parking lot had a dozen people standing in it who had no reason to be there that early. By 7, there were 40. Darren texted to say the company's internal chat channels were moving fast and someone had forwarded the board email to the all-staff list. At 7:15, a text from an unknown number, It's Bev. Mr. Hartwell is here. He's asking if he can see you in the conference room. Second floor. He has Rosie with him. Kathleen was there in 4 minutes. Walter was sitting in the same chair as the day before. Rosie sat beside him with a new coloring book, horses this time, and looked up when Kathleen came in. You came back, Rosie said. I work here. Rosie considered this. Grandpa works here too. Sort of, Walter agreed. Kathleen closed the door and sat across from them. I read everything. I sent it to the board. Harold Stenwick is on his way. I know. Walter's hands were folded on the table. He told me. He said you've been in contact for 6 months. Since August. Someone inside the company reached me through a mutual contact. A land surveyor who'd worked the Clearwater Valley parcel and couldn't make the numbers add up. He brought the discrepancy to Gordon. Gordon told him the assessment methodology had changed. He brought it to me instead. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Walter looked at Rosie for a moment. Because she's 7, and for 3 years I have been trying very hard to give her the most ordinary childhood I can manage. Her mother, his voice steadied itself. Her mother died when Rosie was 3, my daughter. She was 31. Kathleen felt something close in her chest, so it's been the two of us, and I was not ready to hand her a circus. Press on the doorstep, cameras, board politics. He looked back at Kathleen. But the Clearwater deal changed things. That's not just fraud. That's the company using an ambiguity clause to walk past a covenant. I negotiated personally with the Sequapim Nation in 2009. That's not a financial crime. That's a betrayal. Kathleen nodded slowly. I pushed back on the Clearwater deal yesterday. Gordon wasn't happy. I know. He told you the market doesn't wait for perfect paperwork. She stared at him. How do you know that? Walter gave her a small, tired smile. I know Gordon Fife very well. I hired him. That's on me. The door opened. Harold Stenwick came in leaning on a wooden cane Kathleen hadn't seen before. He looked at Walter for a long moment, and then the two old men shook hands in the particular way of people who have been through things together. You look terrible, Harold told Walter. Thank you, Harold. Harold sat heavily. Kathleen, we need to move quickly. Gordon knows something is happening. He's called 2 board members already this morning. What's he saying? Harold's expression tightened, that the documents are fabricated, that Walter is a grieving old man with a vendetta, that you're an inexperienced CEO who's been manipulated by someone who hasn't been part of this company in 4 years. Kathleen's jaw set. Then we don't give him time to build that narrative. The board meeting that afternoon was the most difficult 2 hours of Kathleen's professional life. Gordon arrived prepared. He had a lawyer at his elbow, a counter-narrative ready, and the particular confidence of a man who has survived many rooms by controlling the temperature. When Walter walked in the same work jacket, Rosie's hand in his, her strawberry backpack bouncing, Gordon's composure slipped for exactly 1 second before he reassembled it. Walter. His voice was measured. This is unexpected, is it? Walter settled Rosie in a chair against the wall with her coloring book and her pencil case. He sat beside Kathleen without looking at Gordon again. Gordon turned to the board. I want it on record that I have serious concerns about the process here. This meeting was called without proper notice. The individual who has presented these allegations has been absent from this company for 4 years and has a clear personal bias. He has majority shares, Harold said mildly. He can call an emergency meeting under the founding charter. Has been able to since 1993. Gordon's lawyer leaned in to murmur something. Gordon's expression didn't change. The documents he's presented, Gordon continued, are either fabricated or profoundly misinterpreted. I welcome a forensic audit. I have nothing to hide. Then you won't object to the auditors we've already retained, Kathleen said. They're starting Monday. Something moved behind Gordon's eyes. Walter opened the folder on the table. Transaction 1. November 2021. Hartwell divests a 340-hectare parcel in the Nechako watershed, assessed at $1.2 million, sold to Northgate Property Holdings, registered address, a mailbox in Leduc, Alberta. He looked up. Northgate sells the same parcel to Meridian Capital in April 2023 for $4.7 million. He turned a page. Transaction 2, March 2022. Hartwell divests. I can explain those assessments. Gordon's voice was still controlled. Please do. The market shifted. Post-COVID land values in northern BC were unpredictable. Our assessments were based on reports prepared by Stonefield Consulting. Walter's voice was patient and absolutely flat. Stonefield Consulting, incorporated in 2020, registered to a business address shared with your sister's accounting practice in Red Deer. The room went quiet in a way that had weight to it. Fiona Lamb, who had been still and pale since Walter began speaking, set her pen down on the table. I didn't know about Stonefield, she said. Her voice was barely audible. Gordon told me they were the firm the board had pre-approved. I have the email. I can show everyone the email he sent me. Fiona, Gordon said. I'm not taking this alone. She looked at the board. I approved the assessments in good faith. I was given false information about the source. That's documented. Gordon stood up. This is a coordinated, please sit down, Mr. Fife. Kathleen's voice was quiet. It landed anyway. The room held. Gordon sat. The vote to remove Gordon Fife and suspend Fiona Lamb pending investigation was 7-2. The two dissenting votes came from board members Kathleen had already identified as allies of Gordon's. They looked uncomfortable raising their hands, but they did it anyway. Gordon left without speaking. His lawyer gathered papers slowly, deliberately, the way lawyers do when they want to signal that this isn't over. At the door, Gordon paused and looked back at Walter. You planned this down to the coat, he said. The granddaughter. The whole thing. I've been wearing this coat for 15 years, Walter said. And she's 7. She goes where I go. Gordon left. Harold called the vote on the Clearwater acquisition next. Cancel it. Conduct full renegotiation with Sequepem representatives from the beginning. Unanimous. Afterward, board members gathered in small clusters, some relieved, some shaken, all of them trying to process what had just happened. Kathleen stood at the window, looking out at the parking lot where a small crowd had gathered. Employees who had been following the internal chat channels all morning, who had no real information but had come anyway, as if proximity was a form of support. Walter appeared beside her, Rosie at his heel. What happens now? He asked. The RCMP Financial Crimes Unit, Kathleen said. Harold is already on the phone. The audit starts Monday. Gordon will lawyer up and drag this out, but the evidence is clean. It'll hold. And the company? She watched the people in the parking lot. Some of them had been with Hartwell for a decade to decades. Some of them were young, just a year or two in, who had chosen this company because of something they'd read about the founding principles. We rebuild it the right way, she said, starting with the Clearwater consultation. Walter was quiet for a moment. When I started this company, I spent 6 months driving logging roads in northern BC before I signed a single lease. Just to understand what I was asking the land to give up. Nobody told me to do that. It wasn't required. She paused. Your wife came on the 4th trip? He looked at her sideways. Harold talks too much. He talks the right amount. Kathleen kept her eyes on the parking lot. She drove every road with you and then told you exactly which ones not to touch. That's in the company history. I read it when I took the job. Walter was quiet for a while. Then he said, she was a better judge of land than I ever was. Better judge of people, too. You could have stayed away, Kathleen said. After everything, after losing her, after stepping back, you could have let Gordon have it. I thought about it. Walter watched Rosie, who had found a pencil in her jacket pocket and was drawing something on the back of a meeting agenda someone had left on the windowsill. For about a week, he said. Then I thought about Rosie and about what I'd tell her when she's older and asks me what kind of person I chose to be. Rosie held up the agenda paper. I drew a mountain. Walter studied it seriously. That's a very convincing mountain, Bug. I know. She went back to drawing. That evening, the RCMP were notified. The audit firm secured Hartwell's financial servers. Gordon's lawyer filed a notice of intent to claim wrongful dismissal. Standard, Harold said, don't be alarmed, and 3 journalists called asking for comment. Kathleen issued a brief statement. Hartwell Timber and Land is cooperating fully with regulatory authorities in connection with an internal fraud investigation. The company remains committed to its founding principles of responsible land stewardship. Further details will be provided as the investigation proceeds. Then she went down to the parking lot and talked to the people standing there. They asked about their jobs, about the Northern portfolio, about the Clearwater deal. She answered honestly. She didn't know everything yet, but she was going to find out, and she wasn't going to make promises she couldn't keep. A man from the surveying team, she didn't know his name, he'd been with the company 12 years, said, Is it true Walter Hartwell came back? Yes. Is he staying? Kathleen looked up at the second-floor window, where she could just make out the silhouette of an old man in a work jacket looking down at the parking lot. He's here right now, she said. The crowd was quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping, and it spread. The weeks that followed were long and unglamorous. The audit produced exactly what the manila envelope had promised. 21 transactions, $38.4 million. Gordon's numbered company, Stonefield Consulting, a clean, patient trail that had taken 3 years to build and would now take considerably longer to unwind through the courts. Fiona Lamb cooperated. Her situation was complicated. She had been used, but she had also not asked the questions she should have asked. Kathleen spent a long time thinking about that distinction. It kept her honest. 3 executives resigned rather than face the audit's secondary review of their expense accounts. 2 of them cried in Kathleen's office when they handed in their access cards. She didn't feel satisfied about that the way she might have expected. The stock dropped. Not catastrophically, but enough. Investors who had been watching Gordon's land acquisition strategy with admiration had to reframe what they thought they knew. Some of them didn't handle that gracefully. Walter came to the office every Tuesday and Thursday. He always brought Rosie on Thursdays because she didn't have school that afternoon, and Rosie had decided that Bev Kowalski was her particular friend, so she spent those hours at the front desk learning the phone system and eating whatever snacks Bev produced from her desk drawer. "You don't have to come in," Kathleen told him one Thursday evening. "I can call you." "I know." Walter was reviewing the Clearwater consultation documents she'd spread across the conference table. Kathleen looked at him across the documents. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. You could have gone to the RCMP directly 6 months ago. You had enough documentation by October." "Yes." "So why wait? Why come here in person? Why the lobby, the waiting, all of it?" Walter was quiet for a moment. "Because I needed to see it with my own eyes." He looked at the documents. "I spent 4 years being told that companies have to evolve, that what I'd built was admirable but not viable long term, that Gordon was modernizing things. I needed to see whether the heart of it was still there or whether it was already gone." And Walter looked toward the lobby, where Rosie's voice was audible. She was explaining something to Bev in great detail, apparently about the territorial range of moose. "Bev didn't move when security showed up," he said. "She just stood there with her arms out, like it was the most natural thing in the world." He paused. "That told me what I needed to know. The RCMP laid charges against Gordon Fife in the spring. Fraud over $5,000, breach of trust, 2 counts of money laundering. His lawyer issued a statement calling the charges politically motivated, which Kathleen's own lawyer told her to ignore. Meridian Capital quietly returned 3 of the 21 parcels under a confidential agreement. The other 18 were subject to ongoing litigation that the lawyers described as a multi-year process. Kathleen filed the litigation documents and tried not to think about the timeline. The Clearwater consultation took 4 months. Real ones, not a rubber stamp. Kathleen drove the logging roads herself, all of them, before the first meeting. She brought Walter on the second drive and didn't tell him she'd done it alone first. He figured it out anyway. She said, "How? You asked the right questions at the consultation table," he said. "You already knew which roads not to touch. The Sequepem representatives at the table had said something she wrote down and kept. You're the first Hartwell executive to ask what we value about this land rather than what you can take from it. That's a start." "It's only a start," Kathleen had said. "Yes, but it's the right one." On the day the Clearwater Agreement was signed, a genuine partnership agreement, co-management structure, revenue sharing, remediation obligations, Kathleen called Walter. "We did it," she said. "You did it." He was quiet for a moment. "My wife negotiated the first version of that agreement for 11 months. She kept a copy of it framed in her office, said it was the only piece of paper from this company that actually meant what it said. The original frame is still here," Kathleen said. "It's in the boardroom. I always thought it was decorative. It's not decorative. I know that now." There was a pause on the line. Kathleen heard Rosie's voice in the background asking about dinner. "She says hello," Walter said. "Tell her the moose I'm keeping on my desk says hello back." Rosie's delight was audible even through the phone. 6 months after Gordon's removal, Walter called a board meeting and resigned his observer role. Kathleen sat across from him in the conference room, the same one where all of it had started, where Rosie had colored a purple moose and watched him set down the pen he'd used to sign the paperwork. "You're sure?" she said. He looked at her. "Rosie starts grade 3 in September. She's learning to read chapter books. Last week she read me 3 pages of Charlotte's Web out loud and then cried about the ending even though I'd warned her." "I cried too," Kathleen said. "When I was 8, exactly." He folded his hands. "I don't want to be on the phone during that. I don't want to be managing consultation timelines instead of reading chapter books. I've missed enough." He looked out the window. "I trust you with this. I'll make mistakes. Yes. And you'll fix them. That's the job. What if the board loses their nerve? What if the Clearwater arrangement doesn't hold, or the audit findings don't result in real accountability, or the next executive team drifts back toward, then you call me." He stood. "I'm not disappearing. I'm just going home." He picked up his canvas bag. "There's a difference." At the door, he stopped. "Kathleen, yes, she would have liked you." His voice was careful and true. "My daughter. She had the same thing you have, the quality of asking hard questions in rooms where people have decided the easy answer is sufficient. She had very little patience for that, and neither do you." Kathleen's eyes stung. "I wish I'd known her." Walter nodded. "In a way you do. Every time someone at a consultation table says you ask the right question, that's her. She taught me to ask it first." He left. Bev Kowalski, who had somehow known to be in the hallway at that precise moment, handed Kathleen a coffee without comment and went back to her desk. The company didn't return to what it had been before Gordon. The audit had revealed that certain operations in the northern portfolio had been built on assumptions that didn't survive scrutiny, and rebuilding them honestly took longer than optimistic projections suggested. There were quarters that were harder than anyone wanted. But the Clearwater Agreement held. The land surveys Walter had flagged over 4 years of quiet watching were re-examined and in 11 cases, corrected. The consulting contracts were rebuilt from scratch. 3 nations reached out to discuss partnerships after reading the Clearwater terms. Bev got a raise, which Harold had pushed for quietly, and Kathleen had approved loudly. On a Thursday afternoon in October, Rosie came in after school and found Kathleen at the front desk with Bev, reviewing vendor contracts, and stopped in the doorway. "Why are you out here?" "Bev shows me what the paperwork looks like from the ground floor," Kathleen said. "I find it useful." Rosie appeared to find this satisfactory. She climbed onto the stool beside Bev and began telling them about her class's study of the boreal forest, with particular emphasis on beavers, which she considered to be an undervalued contributor to the Canadian ecosystem. Kathleen listened and thought about Walter driving logging roads in a work jacket in 1992, learning what he was asking the land to give up before he asked it. Thought about his daughter at a consultation table for 11 months. Thought about a purple moose on a coloring page and a strawberry backpack, and the sound of a small voice asking, "Grandpa, are those men going to make us go?" They hadn't. And the work, imperfect, slow, honest, continued.